Morning everybody, welcome to our Android Enterprise Recommended webinar for today. All things going well, we'll have you gone and on your way in about an hour's time. My name is Randall Cameron, I'm the Managing Director for Mobile Mentor here in Australia. Today we're going to see Android Enterprise Recommended from 4 unique point of views. Jared is from Google, obviously the makers of Android, and he's going to give us a point of view of why Google started down this path and what they've got planned for the future. James Robinson joins us from HMD, which is the home of the new Nokia, and he's going to talk about what it means for an upcoming phone manufacturer to leverage the Android Enterprise Recommended and Android One programs. Daryl's joining us from VMware as a UEM, Unified Endpoint Management provider, and maker of the VMware Workspace ONE software platform. He's going to talk to us about how they're leveraging the Android Enterprise Recommended program to make things better for your users. Then we're going to wrap up with Liz Knight from Mobile Mentor talking about what it means for her engineers, the boots on the ground, the people who actually implement the technologies that are created by Google, that are delivered in a box format from HMD, that are then managed by a platform such as VMware. I'll then just be the wrap it up at the end and we'll get onto it. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Jared Kennedy from Google.
We certainly have a very popular operating system. In fact, Android is the world's most popular operating system. It's ahead of other operating systems, not just mobile, but also ahead of Windows. So, and this is just GMS devices. Android also ships with open source, but this is just devices which are running the Play Store and all the other Google services. So that's one of the reasons we're talking to you today about why Android is important in your business. We're also the world's largest content distribution platform, not just the largest app store. So in the past with mobility, you would choose your device based on and your platform based on which app was available in which app store. But now pretty much it's everything you can find is in the Google Play Store. There's over 1 million apps and developers working inside that Play ecosystem. And you can't have an app store without security, and there's a perception out there that Android is not secure and that the Play Store is full of malware, which is not true. In fact, we put a huge amount of effort into maintaining the security of the App Store. If you look at some of these statistics down below, we have obviously over 2 billion devices protected, which means we're the world's largest anti-malware company because none of the other competitors in this space have got that number of subscribers. So every Android device in that 2 billion is running Google Play Protect. And if you've got an Android device in front of you now and you look in the Play Store settings, you'll see on the left-hand side the Google Play Protect ecosystem there. We are analyzing 500,000 apps a day, which is pretty much every app in the Play Store is 1 million. So every 2 days, we're scanning all those apps in the Play Store. We scan all of those 2 billion devices on an average once every 2 days. So that we're scanning 1 billion devices a day. And because we're scanning apps not just from the Play Store, but every app on your device, no matter where it was installed, we're scanning 50 billion apps a day. So there's incredible figures there. A statistic from 2016 was that 65% of our detections of malware came from machine learning using that database of app installations and scans that we've done. Moving on. So we've been at this game for a while. Before Android 5, we had a policy called Device Admin. And if you haven't heard that already, we've been quite public with it. It's been deprecated. You had a choice to use Device Admin from Android 5 or to use what was called Android for Work, but is now called Android Enterprise. It's not changed in features. It's just the name changed as of about 2016. But moving forward, each version of Android, we added more and more features. We're getting now to a situation where with Android 9, if you're still calling the Device Admin API, your developer is getting a warning that it's got an API that's been deprecated. As of Android 10, which will come out later this year, the Device Admin API will not work. So now is the time to be planning your Android Enterprise migration. So as we mentioned, it's been deprecated. 2017 was when we actually called this out. So you've had some time to move, as have our developers and our EMM vendors that are working to move their products into Android Enterprise. In fact, if you look at most of the consoles now, you'll see that Android Enterprise is the default. Anything else is called legacy. So the time is to start now. So why did we bring in Android Enterprise? Because customers were saying to us that device admin wasn't doing what they needed it to do. They wanted powerful, consistent, flexible management capabilities across a range of manufacturers. As you probably know, some manufacturers like Samsung and Zebra and Honeywell and others had their own EMM integrations, but that was different based on manufacturer. They also wanted the ability to have a single app store and have to do away with things like application wrapping or choosing an application from an EMM vendor to do the functionality required. They wanted a choice to be able to use native applications or anything from the Play Store. And then they wanted comprehensive security. And as I mentioned, we've got a lot of security built into products like Play Protect. So that's what Android Enterprise delivers. So one of the ways you needed to think about deploying is who owns a device. We have two ownership models, personally owned and company owned. With personally owned, you essentially want a situation where you've got work-life balance and you want separation between work and personal. And from a company point of view, you want to protect that data. So the work profile is what delivers that. So we recommend that any device that is connected to the enterprise that is running anything later than Android 5 should have a work profile deployed, and that allows you to give the employee full access to the personal side of the device with no controls, with the exception of being able to block unknown sources installs. They can install whichever app they like. They can have all the apps and data on the personal side with no surveillance by the corporate. And then on the work side, all those apps are badged, and then you don't have a situation where that data can be leaked. With the company-owned devices, we've supported a number of different modes. Similar to personally owned, you can have a corporate-owned device with a personal profile that's been available since Android 8. But also since Android 5, you can have a fully managed device that's locked down to work-only applications, which we call corporate-owned business-only, or even further locked down to something dedicated where you may have it set up as a kiosk or a shared user device that's used by multiple people. Zero touch, if you've bought these devices and you think this is great and you've got more than one, in fact, if you've got more than hundreds, then zero touch enrollment is the quickest and easiest way. If you're familiar with Apple's DEP program or the Samsung Knox mobile enrollment or other fast provisioning tools out there, this is very similar. Uses similar sort of infrastructure. The device, when it's first booted, connects to the internet during the setup wizard. Your reseller, if they're authorized, can put the IMEI number, or if it's a Wi-Fi device, the serial number of that device into our cloud. And then you as a customer can configure the settings in terms of which EMM to install, which EMM instance, which profile ID, even which user, and then that gets pushed down over the air. So it essentially means zero touch for the end user. Other than connecting to internet, the device can fully enroll and can also not be cancelled by the end user. So it guarantees that device will be set up for that employee, and they will not be able to repurpose that device for personal reasons. So with that all said, that's great. You want to go ahead. We've won you over. We want to buy devices. We want to deploy. Who do I buy them from? Who do I get to install it for me? Which EMM do I use? Which carrier do I connect it to? So we had our customers coming to us and asking who, and there's no way that we could recommend someone unless we've actually set some criteria and we're actually confident in that criteria ourselves. And that when you deploy using those tools or buying those products, that they actually work. And that also they continue to work after you've purchased them. So this is what the Android Enterprise Recommended program has delivered. We first introduced that in February 2018 at the Mobile World Congress, where we announced that for OEMs, the knowledge worker devices, then soon followed by rugged devices. We set a bunch of criteria for what you needed to provide above and beyond just Android Enterprise compatibility, but actually making sure we had things like security updates every 90 days and zero touch support, as well as all of the marketing support that they need to provide to take their device to market. We then launched earlier this year Enterprise Mobility Management. So a range of EMM vendors joined that program. And again, it wasn't just enterprise compatibility. It was a whole bunch of optional features which we thought were important if we're going to recommend that vendor. And then with managed service providers, we added that also earlier this year, where a range of partners, including Mobile Mentor, one of only two in this country, and this region that were selected. They went through a whole series of testing and certification and additional training to reach that qualification. So you can be absolutely guaranteed that if you're buying off this list, you're getting a device that Google said that works. It's going to work with an EMM that has all the features you needed, and it's going to be deployed and supported by a professional organization. So we only launched less than a year ago, or just over a year ago, but it's having a huge impact. You can see here on these slides how many customers are aware of it and actually having it make a major influence in their purchasing decisions. So absolutely, it's been great in terms of the market acceptance of this branding. So for devices, as I mentioned, you can go to our website. If you go to android.com/enterprise and you click on Get Started, you'll see a list of devices. In that device list, it will show the ones that are AER. You can also search for other collections like rugged or for zero-touch support. Every AER device has zero-touch support, and we say consistent user experience because every one of those devices on that list has been physically tested by Google. Manufacturers actually send them off to our head office, and we run through a series of EMM tests to make sure these devices actually work the way that they were designed. So there's lots of devices in there. They're growing every day. There's a dozen OEMs up there and over 60 devices. We also added rugged devices where there's 8 OEMs and over 15 devices, and that continues each day. So with AER rugged, in addition to Knowledge Worker, we added a few extra things. Like obviously they need to be built for harsh environments, extended battery life, they must have zero touch, they must do their updates. They've actually got longer requirement on updates there. So instead of 3 years under Knowledge Worker, it's got 5 years for these devices, considering the type of life cycles these devices have out there in those rugged installations. So there's a list of devices there on the rugged. Great to see that these devices are supporting modern versions of Android when many of these were locked to Android 4 and earlier, only a couple of years ago. EMMs, I won't spend too much time on this. You can have a look in their documentation for some of the companies that are on this list, but essentially we took what was enterprise compatibility as stage 1, but then we said there are a bunch of additional features which are advanced that they must have. Technical leadership means that they're actually showing and promoting Android Enterprise as the default option, which you'll see in all their consoles, that if you create an Android profile, Android Enterprise is default. From a support point of view, if you log a ticket with them, they've got escalation support to Google, so you know you're backed end to end. This is not just your EMM vendor on their own. They've actually got a dedicated engineer in our head office that's working with them for any escalations. And then from a deployment point of view, they've trained their field. So you're going to find that your local sales engineer here in Australia and New Zealand from these organizations has been trained by Google. So here's some of the partners there. I'm sure there's no surprises. All the leading vendors are in there, and we continue to invite and add partners into that over time. MSPs, finally. So Mobile Mentor, as I mentioned, a part of this. So we've actually spent a lot of time. We had our experts out from New York end of last year, and Mobile Mentor sent a team of engineers into our office to do the advanced level training. They have also committed to leading with Android Enterprise across all of their customers and migrating all existing customers onto this platform. So they're absolutely on message with us in terms of what the future is for mobility. And then again, similar to the EMMs, if anything goes wrong or they need assistance or there's a new use case or they've got a feature request, they're absolutely backed by Google. So you can be guaranteed that working with Mobile Mentor and with an EMM that's on our list and with an OEM that you're going to get a great solution. So there's a list of partners there, as I mentioned, highlighted there, Mobile Mentor, one of only 2 in Australia and New Zealand. And there's a bunch of other global players in there, but great to see we've got local representation in our part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jared. That was great. So that gives us the viewpoint of why did Google, as the business that creates Android, create this ecosystem and a broad brush overview. Let's jump in now to hear from James Robinson from HMD, which is the new home of Nokia phones, which is an old brand, but had a great rebirth. And what does it mean to them? How are they going to market? And what does this really mean to a new vendor, a new kid on the block with an old name in Nokia? Over to you.
Thanks, Randall. And I think it was great to get that, I guess, that introduction from Gerard and the focus that Google now have on a standardized platform. So where we are as HMD, we're now the home of Nokia phones. So we have the license to produce Nokia phones. Let's move on to the next slide. So I'm the general manager for HMD for Australia and New Zealand. So we have relationships with the operators and a lot of the key enterprise partners across Australia and New Zealand. When we look at, I guess, the importance of mobility in a lot of organisations, we look at the fact that there are usually three stakeholders. So the first stakeholder is typically the CIO or the CTO, and their consideration with mobile is around predominantly keeping a fleet up to date, delivering the latest capabilities and technologies to their fleet of staff. So a big importance to those guys is security. So monthly security updates are a must for a CIO. And then when we think about the end user, they're always experience focused. So they want a brand, they want camera, they want good battery life. They're the sort of typical things that the end user's looking for. But then the CFO is looking at things like total cost of ownership. They're looking at what they can unlock in terms of their cost of capital in that fleet. So when we look at all of those things, I think that's where HMD now have a really strong proposition. Next slide, please, Will. So as we heard from Gerard, Android makes for a really compelling argument. We know that the Android operating system's been around now for over 10 years. There are multiple different versions of Android out in the marketplace. So what we see though, out of that is there's a lot of fragmentation in the marketplace. There are a lot of models that won't be getting upgrades in the devices. So they may have launched on L or M or N, and they won't be getting any additional upgrades. So whilst it's great that there are so many devices out there, the fragmentation within terms of the spec and the operating systems out there make it difficult to manage and operate a fleet. So moving forward, if we think about what's important for us when we deliver Android to the market, we have three key pillars. Those pillars are being secure, up to date, and easy to use. So that security focus for us is ensuring that we have frequent software updates. So the monthly security patches that Android make available to the vendors, where we have a commitment to make sure that they're available to our customers. We're also making sure that the operating system or the devices are up to date with the latest operating system. So as of last week, we've announced that the Nokia One will be receiving Android Pie. So that's a product that we launched at $149 over a year ago, and that's now being updated to Android Pie. So we have a commitment that across the range, all of our devices will be receiving those software updates for at least 2 years, and those security updates for 3 years. And then the third key pillar to this, when we think about what users want, is that ease of use. So we do no duplication of applications. We don't put a software layer over the top. We're delivering pure Android to the end user. We've got a lot of confidence now after over 10 years of operation that Google are delivering a top quality version of Android. We don't need to play with that. What we want to focus on is making sure that we can deliver all of the security updates and the operating system updates across the portfolio of devices for us. So that was our commitment as HMD. The next step in that was moving into Android One. So last year we announced at MWC that all of our devices from Nokia 3 and above were going to be Android One. We've now, from this year, from every device from Nokia 2.2 and above will be Android One in the marketplace. What does Android One actually mean? So Android One is a clean version of Android that has no bloatware. It's free of any of the duplication and updates. It brings all of the Google services to the front for the user. And it also means that typically you're getting better performance because you don't have that bloatware. You're getting better battery life out of the products because there's no additional processing for the extra software layer that's in there. And typically you're getting access to the latest features and functionality before Android gets it. So similar to the Pixel program, Android One is delivering the latest features and functionality out to the devices. On top of that, there's a minimum spec of device that's required to underpin that Android One. And that's why up until this year, we had Nokia 3 and above because that had the minimum specifications required. And now we've upped the specifications in our 2 series, so that now has Android One introduced to it. So from the perspective of our commitment to our customers that we spoke about with the introduction of Android One, we have a focus on the experience getting better for the customer. So when we look at what that actually means, so we have now the largest portfolio of upgraded devices on Android Pie. As we said, everything from our Nokia 1 now to Nokia 9 in the current range has Android Pie. We're 50% faster to upgrade our portfolio than our closest competitor. Some competitors launch devices in the market without providing those letter updates at all. So when we're thinking about an enterprise fleet, getting access to the latest software is important, and I'll get into that in a minute. But what we've got here is a little comparison with the Nokia 5 that we launched in Australia in July 2017. So 2 years ago, exactly, we launched the Nokia 5 into the Australian marketplace, and in August, we launched it in New Zealand. That launched on Android 7 or Android N at the time, and it was at the time probably the cheapest device to have access to Android 7 or Nougat. We saw competitive products that launched in Australia at $329 and in New Zealand at $349. We saw competitive products that were still selling on Android L, which was 2 versions prior to N. If we now have a look at Nokia 5 today, it is updated to Android Pie, which is a substantial improvement for a product that at the time you were paying in the mid $300 for on Android 7. Typically for a device like that, you'd be pretty wrapped if you got 1 operating system update, but we've delivered 2 operating system updates to that. What have we seen in that as improvements? So when we introduced it to Android Oreo or 8, that introduced the screen-in-screen video capability, which was typically a flagship feature before that. It's now available in a sub $400 product. On top of that, when we migrated it or upgraded it to Android Pie, that then introduced the latest AI features that Google has in their Android operating system. And what we saw was an improvement in the battery efficiency by up to 20%. So it's probably the first time in mobile history that we could say that the battery life in a product has gotten better over time. And that's our key focus, is delivering a product and experience to customers that genuinely gets better over time, rather than seeing that degradation over time. And that's our key focus when we talk about that commitment that we're making to our customers around pure, secure, and up-to-date, combined with Android One, is about delivering an experience that just keeps getting better over time. We have, as we mentioned, a full portfolio of devices. What Gerard spoke about just before is the Android Enterprise Recommended program. So what we have here is a list of our devices that Android Enterprise recommended. And I guess the key message here is that we have everything from a flagship product that's at about $1,100 in the Nokia 9 PureView, that's delivering an optimal camera experience and arguably the best camera experience on the market, right down to the Nokia 4.2, which is launching this week in Australia and is launching in about 3 weeks' time in New Zealand, are all Android Enterprise recommended products. So everything from the Nokia 4.2, which is a $299 product in Australia, right up to a $1,099 Nokia 9 PureView, we have an Android Enterprise recommended portfolio. So it should give you a lot of comfort that when you select a Nokia handset, that you not only have that Android One experience, but it has the Android Enterprise recommended certification, which are really important points, as we saw earlier, in the selection process and criteria for a lot of organizations now. And I guess the next part is, yes, we have a commitment to our customers, and having a commitment or a promise to our customers is one thing, but actually delivering against that commitment and promise is another. So what we see here is that portfolio or that range of devices that we've launched since 2018, or so the 1st of January 2018 to now, you can see that there have been, well, it's now over 234 releases of the security patches. And what we've got on the right-hand side is the number of days from when Google first announced that those security patches are available to when we deliver them or will make them available to the devices in country. So that performance is unmatched with our competitors, but it's more to the point now, the proof is in the pudding. It should give you a lot of confidence that when you're purchasing a Nokia device, you know that you will get those security updates. You know that you're working with the most secure fleet in the marketplace today. So what does this actually mean for an enterprise? Why is it important to have an up-to-date portfolio? So I guess for me, there are two considerations when we look at this. The first one is around deployment of capability. So you may be looking at Android Q now, looking at the capabilities that are unlocked as part of that and building that into an application or services to your fleet of customers in your organization. If you've got a fleet that is questionable whether it's going to update to Android Q, all of that effort, work, and capital investment that you're putting into that will either go to waste or it will take a very long time for you to be able to deploy that to your fleet. If it takes 12 months for the OEM that you work with, that brand that you work with, to roll out Android Q, it's going to take you a long time to actually see that return on the investment that you've made in that capability. Whereas if you look at an H&D fleet, you should have a high degree of confidence now that you will be getting Q and it won't take you 12 months or longer to get access to that. Nokia 7 Plus had Android Pie less than 1 month after Android Pie was made available to all Android One OEMs. So if you had that in your fleet and you had developed capability around Android Q, you know that you could deploy that very quickly to your fleet of users across your organization. And then the next part is around that mobility management. If you're working with a mobile device management, they are delivering capability. So they'll be looking at Android Q now and the new capabilities that they will be able to unlock when a fleet is moved to Android Q. So then as a portfolio or a fleet manager, if you have a fleet of devices that are moving over to Android Q, also means that you can deploy the latest capabilities within that MDM to your fleet. You don't have to wait 6, 12, or even longer to deploy those capabilities out to your fleet of devices in your range. That's the H&D story. And I'm going to hand back to Randall now.
Thank you, James. That's awesome. Some things that I've never heard from a hardware vendor before is we're happy that there's no bloatware. Normally that's it goes hand in hand with a phone manufacturer. So thanks very much for that. And I guess the key takeaway is that friends shouldn't let friends buy devices that can't be upgraded. So make sure you let your friends know to be part of the Android One program. Let's hand it over now to Daryl from VMware to take a look at, what has Google now done that's made things easier from their point of view as a MDM, as we most commonly refer to them as mobile device management, which became EMM, which is enterprise mobility management, which is now being coined UEM, which is unified endpoint management. Over to you, Daryl.
Thanks, Randall. Thanks very much for your time. So go to the next slide. Thanks, Will. Yeah, so I think obviously we want to talk about some of the challenges we've faced as a solution, providing enterprise mobility management for a whole range of devices. And as Jared said, we could see some of the challenges with obviously device admin mode. I mean, the first challenge really obviously was when you're managing devices in the field. Every device needed a Google ID, and then obviously the user accepted terms and conditions in that. And obviously that's not too bad if it's someone's personal device, but obviously if you're getting into a device that's used within the field and you're managing that, within thousands of devices in the field, customers find that a challenge. And obviously in certain circumstances they'd be managing multiple Google IDs, or sometimes they were using one Google ID across a range of devices, which was certainly a no-no. And that was certainly one challenge that we could see in the field with obviously the device admin mode. Next slide, please. The second area was obviously around enrolling devices. Now, whilst it's not too hard to enroll a device with the previous mode, it had some challenges in terms of prompt the users to obviously select various items. Obviously, one being going into the device admin mode and activating that, and various screens to process the user to enroll their device. And that had some challenges in terms of the user getting different screens. Some of that isn't particularly user friendly. And then obviously the challenge if other screens come along in the future on a device, the user might be obviously accepting those without understanding what's going on with that. So that was a sort of another challenge that we faced with our clients in terms of the previous method. Another area was obviously around where customers wanted to have an email client on older versions of Android. They wanted to have the separation of corporate email from personal. So someone having their own device and wanting to have their work profile separate from that. And with the previous method, there was solutions that were available. Obviously, we provided our AirWatch inbox at the time. It's been replaced by Workspace ONE Boxer, which is a much nicer user experience. And this is obviously another area in terms where we're building capabilities to address this challenge with the previous methods of Android. And then obviously there was a whole range of capabilities, quite extensive in terms of managing Android devices. Obviously, you can see here just one of the many screens available in configuring an Android device. But as you can see on the right-hand side there was really a plethora of various capabilities that were available depending on the Android device and manufacturer. So then you get customers saying, well, can I do this on this device? Well, it depends. And there's a whole range of different capabilities, and it certainly wasn't consistent. There was certain manufacturers that made more of an investment in various capabilities, but it certainly provided a mix in terms of what customers were doing with managing the Android settings at the time. And obviously then, if you look at a particular manufacturer, obviously then the capabilities of those varied, with the different versions that are available. So it wasn't a view of, okay, if you're getting to the latest version in this capability, all those items are available. You can see here that there's really no uniformity in terms of the type of settings that are available across those devices. And that was another area that we were managing with certain customers and the types of devices that they want to use. So maybe having to use a particular device for a particular setting and not giving the flexibility of device choice that was available, and some of the benefits of James outlined with their devices as well. So obviously, Android Enterprise recommended, as Gerard mentioned, is certainly the direction in terms of managing Android devices. Now, VMware was a strong proponent of this capability, from the very first release. If you look at our console now, if you're configuring a device, obviously it's all about Android Enterprise. So we are taking a leadership position in terms of the capabilities to manage devices in Android Enterprise, and that is certainly our recommended go-to with customers. And if customers are obviously wanting anything in maybe the device admin mode, we really want to talk through why you're doing that. There are obviously risks in doing that. You really need to look at Android Enterprise as your strategic direction going forward. So as we've outlined, there's obviously a number of benefits for you in terms of the capability of the operating system combined with the enterprise mobility management of Workspace ONE to manage your Android devices. Obviously, across a range of different devices, supporting OEM config to do that. As Jared mentioned, obviously a range of security measures. The onboarding of devices is significantly streamlined in terms of user self-enrolling or enrolling a device over the air, and obviously then increased user productivity, knowing that there's the work part of the device, if there's a device, and this uniformity allows VMware to then focus on a range of innovations. So as we'll outline, the ability to provide extra capabilities in terms of managing your Android devices and taking that further with other capabilities as well. So obviously we support obviously the personal owned device, bring your own device, the work profile, as Jared mentioned. It's really nice on Android. It shows you this is the work component of your device, and that's separated from the personal device. Those separate icons, the different colored icons there. make it really clear for the end user, addressing a whole range of issues as we mentioned before. Then there's the company-owned management, so the ability to manage the complete device so that it's everything over the air with managing the device can be configured. You can silently push out applications to those devices. You can even then put the device into a kiosk mode and do settings with that as well. And we're also supporting very new, fully managed with the work profile component, which is the ability of obviously managing the device mixed with the work profile that we've seen on the left. So only a very select few of device management capabilities are available from just a couple of vendors, VMware being one of those. So obviously if you're looking to manage those types of use cases, we support this code mode as well. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. Look forward to obviously working with you. We've got a range of SEs around Australia and New Zealand and can obviously support you with your needs in managing Android devices.
Thanks very much, Daryl. That was great. So it's pretty safe to say then that VMware can now focus on new innovative add-ons to Android and other mobile OSs, things like your Workspace ONE Intelligence product. I know that you're pushing quite hard at the moment, rather than worrying about low-level things like, can I get an email client that's workable onto this device? Will it work? Will it accept a certificate or a VPN and things like that? It seems like all of those low-level things that were pain points for us in the years gone by of a fragmented Android are now largely gone. Is that about a fair statement, Daryl?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, our focus is obviously on the likes of, obviously those capabilities, OEM config intelligence gives the ability to understand battery health, reporting and automation. That's really the next level of value add for customers.
Yeah, the next level. That's a great way of putting it. Thank you very much, Daryl. Really appreciate that. We're going to now switch gears into Liz Knight, who's joining us from the Mobile Mentor Wellington office, who heads up our security team, to talk about it from the boots on the ground. So we've been given a platform from Google. We've been given a device from HMD. We've put it on a management platform like VMware. What does that then mean for Liz's team of engineers, and how do they leverage it? Over to you, Liz.
Thanks, Randall. So we've been really excited to learn about Android Enterprise and bring some customers over to Android Enterprise and start using these new Android Enterprise enabled devices, and it's been great. One thing that we're finding as we're getting close to the release of Android Q is that some customers are still kind of wondering why they should go with Android Enterprise, and we're still got a few customers to get over the line. So hopefully some of you are listening and starting to understand the reasons why you should be heading in that direction. I thought I would dust some of the myths we're hearing in the market. Hopefully Gerard and James and VMware have talked about why Android Enterprise is actually secure. We hear about it not being secure, but that's definitely not the case. Being able to have the same policies across any Android Enterprise recommended device that your users pick up, having consistency, better encryption policies, and just a whole lot of set of policies that you can deploy to Android Enterprise is really powerful. So definitely ticking the security box. We've heard customers say they're using Knox Mobile Enrollment or Knox, and so they don't need Android Enterprise. This is not the case. KME couples up with Android Enterprise. It'll help with streamlining the enrollment, as will the Zero Touch from Google. And you can use Knox policies in addition to Android Enterprise policies, but you'll definitely need Android Enterprise to enable those policies on devices running Android 10 and over. Some customers think they'll be able to still enroll and manage a device with Android 10 without enabling Android Enterprise. That is not the case either, as you would have seen from Gerard's slide. As from Android 10, Android Q, all the old ways of managing Android devices is being deprecated, so you just won't be able to do any kind of management or security without enabling Android Enterprise. So please don't just stick with device admin. And you definitely do need Android Enterprise, and it does cover most of your or all of your use cases. So what we're seeing is we've got 4 different use cases, and these have been talked about. What we're seeing is different customers choosing different use cases for their requirements, or a mix and match depending on their different use cases they have in the business. So customers with BYOD devices, or even devices that are running an older version of Android that need to enable Android Enterprise, are using this work profile to deploy a managed container on the device that provides that security for all your corporate data. The full managed device for companies that don't want their users to have any kind of personal content on the device. This allows them to set up the devices without any Gmail account and push all the work apps down. It's very nice and clean. Kiosk device is really great for inventory, stock take. Those ruggedized devices meeting that kiosk work case really well. And also the cold work model, which we're seeing a lot of organizations go for, that have personally enabled devices. So that means they want to let their users have their own email and their own policies around their personal usage, and also their own apps. That's all possible with Cope, but then you have your work data and your work email and all of your work apps fully secured and contained on the device. So there's definitely different profiles for every use case. We've yet to see a use case that can't be delivered with one of these 4 lockdowns. So definitely good to pick up one of these use cases and give it a try. A lot of customers don't really understand, and we're trying to communicate, and that's what this webinar is about, the reasons why you want to go Android Enterprise. I think really important to understand that with the deprecation of the old policies, you won't be able to manage devices. So what that means in a practical perspective, one of our customers found out recently, we won't be able to send down passcodes to devices, and we also won't be able to send down passcode unlock. So if you have a user that's gone to family wedding, taken a lot of great photos, and then forgets his PIN code and hasn't backed up those photos, the EMM tooling won't be able to send a PIN code reset or a clear down to the device. So in this particular instance, our customer was unable to access his photos. Those photos were really important to him, but because the policy to unlock the device has been deprecated, he was unable to get access to his phone. So we really want customers to understand that by not going Android Enterprise and by thinking that you continue to use the old Android device admin APIs, you'll be in a good position. There's going to be a point where this might happen to your CEO or CIO, and you're going to have wanted them enabled on Android Enterprise, so you can use all the new policies and settings to be able to manage and secure and unlock devices. So don't be like Bill. We're really talking to customers about what next, like how do you enable Android Enterprise? Firstly, decide what profiles you're going to need, whether you're going to need BYOD or COAT, and get those all ready to go. You'll need a Google administrator account, and you'll need to integrate Android Enterprise with your UEM platform. Once you're in and once you're configured and integrated, you'll be able to set up your policies, and you'll be able to start user acceptance testing. We recommend that you do this in the next few weeks, so that when the first Android 10 devices hit the market around September timeframe, you'll be ready to go live and ready to support the new devices as they come on board. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Liz. That's great to hear, what it actually means in a practical sense from an engineering perspective. So let's wrap this up. If you've got any questions while I'm wrapping this up, you might want to type them into the chat, and we probably will have a few minutes at the end to talk about it. So just sort of summarising here that for those of you who are more observant, you'll know that Android has been named after desserts in alphabetical order. So obviously Alpha and Beta were off the table, but we started a cupcake and we've got to pie. And if anybody knows the name of a nice flavoursome dessert for Q, please feel free to put that in the chat window. We talked about that Android device and Android Enterprise support started coming in just a few versions ago and is now being deprecated from Q onwards. So we now need to make the second generation change. And as we know, as software technologists, which most of us probably are on this call here, it takes 2 or 3 versions to get things right. So what I did to actually unpack that was have a bit of a look at the timeline to think about how is it that this all happened? Well, it actually happened with Android for Work back in February 2015. And as a service provider and as a someone who has customers who comes and says, can we do this? Android for Work was version 1 from most software vendors. It was okay, but showed a lot of promise, but not a lot of maturity in the market. We then moved on to August 2015, where Google actually separated security patching from the OS. That in its own right didn't really mean much to me, but now we see that companies like HMD can actually roll out security patches at a much faster velocity without having to worry about OS updates. So OS updates happening once a year, but security patching happening on a monthly frequency. Separating those two things is now coming home to roost and is providing a great enterprise-based device for us. In December of 2016, the rebranding happened to Android Enterprise, and we'll call that Android for Work version 2, if you like. We saw a lot more maturity in its APIs and how it operated and its documentation. And we started to see some good success in the early days there in 2017, essentially. In May of 2017, we saw Project Treble, which was one that really went under the radar for a lot of people. But just like the security patching got separated from the OS, this was about separating the operating system from the lower dependencies of a device. So when Nokia or HMD take a new operating system from Google, they previously had to write drivers for the silicon and for Bluetooth and screens and cameras and things like that. And those dependencies were sort of hardwired, if you like, and they could break with a new version of the operating system. So with Project Treble, Google aimed to separate that away so that when a new version of the operating system came about, that there wasn't so much testing that was required from HMD. And as a result, things like a Nokia One, I can't believe it, $100 Android device, receiving an OS update. That was something that was certainly off the cards of many years ago, and Project Treble was a lot of credit for that one. We moved forward to September 2017 and the retail launch of Android One. And as I mentioned before, friends shouldn't let friends buy Android devices that don't get upgraded. So if you've got friends who want to buy Android, just tell them to go into any of the shops. They can go into a JB Hi-Fi or a telco, it doesn't really matter. And if they just ask for Android One-based devices, they know they're receiving something that's got some kind of future. It's not just going to be out of date when they buy it and more out of date as they use it. It's going to maintain currency. And I really like the statement there from James earlier that said, this might be the first time in history that a phone's actually got a better battery life over time. I think that was a great statement. We fast forward then to February 2018 and the Android Enterprise Recommended program came into existence as an overlay to the Android One consumer-facing brand, if you like. The 3 parts of that were the devices got rolled out first, and that was where HMD entered the picture. And the second part, as we talked about, was the EMMs, UEMs, MDMs got rolled out, and they're part of the picture. And then the third part was with the service providers like us getting added to the picture in just February of this year. So when we go back through time, we can see that none of these made a big impact, but together they've made a very interesting journey for Android. So summing this up, we can say that Android One and Android Enterprise Recommended has fixed that image in the background, which was the Android fragmentation of about 2017. I think that one was taken, where there was somewhere over 20,000 variants of Android in the market. Imagine trying to manage 20,000 variants of Android in your enterprise today. It's an impossible task. So we need to get some standardization. It means that devices can have many price points. And James, I'll get you to come off mute. What's a Nokia 7.1 worth in the market today? Is it still holding at $499 or is it even cheaper than that?
It's still holding at $499. You might find the occasional sale where it's around $449.
Yeah, but I think that's just a fantastic mid-range. It looks like a new phone with a notch there and those sort of things, and certainly got some great features built into it. So I think that's an awesome fleet phone. We've certainly seen it as a service provider that people have started gravitating towards that and going, that's a pretty good fleet buy for us. It's not the cheapest end of town. It's not the most expensive end of town. Really quite a good mid-market device. We've heard from VMware today that have talked about that they can focus their attention on the new things that need to happen rather than the old things of, will it work on this device and do I need to build some capability to make it work on this device? Let's get away from the fragmented mess and let's focus on the bigger challenges. And VMware is certainly doing a great job of that with their Workspace ONE intelligence to start to report back to you what's really happening with your devices out in the field. And then finally, Mobile Mentor as a service provider, we used to have our engineers looking in many different directions for many different problems. Hopefully we've now got a unified view and we can all look to the same direction and have that backed by Google and a program that they're supporting us with. So your to-do list here is that you can get on the ball and get ahead of this and really be ready for it to be coming, because as we know with a mobile device, when HMD does ship the new one with Android Q on it towards the end of this year, downgrades don't happen with mobile phones. So you can't say, look, I'm not ready for that, can I roll back to an earlier version of Android? That's certainly something that's not on the card. So you need to be on the ball and get forward with that one. That maybe it's time to revisit a BYOD program if you've been putting that on hold, because with things like you don't have to maintain a list of devices where you could say, look, these are the 10 devices that we support. You can actually just say to your people, hey, here's a link to the Android Enterprise Recommended or Android One site, and any of those devices are supported. So it makes BYOD actually a very manageable solution. So it's all about get ready is what this webinar is about. Time's ticking and it's all happening. Let's bring this home. That today we talked about Mobile Mentor as a business. We bring together you as a customer with some development for Android, in this case for today's session, to get those business productivity apps out the door, with VMware to secure and manage and distribute those apps, and then with Mobile Mentor to supply the service to that 24/7, in this case using a Nokia 7.1 as the image device. So that's us done. For today, we'll start ripping into a few Q&A while we've got everybody here, because they have come through. And let me, whoa, there's a whole bunch of them. Let me have a quick read here and see what we've got.
Randall, I'll take one.
Okay,
from
you got one,
Daniel
go for it.
Jackson. Yeah, Daniel says he administers over 160 BYOD users, mainly use Samsung and Apple. How do you encourage them to move to an AER device? What we've been doing is sharing the list of AER recommended devices with our customers, and that's available online. Jared, you might want to drop the URL in the chat window. But that list you can supply to end users, and they'll see that there's a whole lot of different devices that they can choose from that will meet your corporate requirements. You can limit the access to email and other apps so that they're only going to get those if their device is enrolled by Android Enterprise. So there's a bit of carrot and stick there, but the selection of devices and the ability for them to see what devices are available. And then if you couple that with the Nokia devices that are a good price range and also have great battery life, I think, yeah, you'll see the pickup won't be so hard, hopefully.
Awesome.
I think, yeah, it's all in place for a good experience for end users.
Thanks, Liz. Let's go to the next one here. Will Android Enterprise allow the control of Android version implementation, e.g. delay, prevent Android upgrades? That could be Jared or Daryl. Who wants to go?
Yeah, that's Jared. So I did post a reply to the chat. So there is a system update policy which has the ability to do defer. Now, defer means a number of days. So up until Android 9, that was 30 days, but as of Android 9, that's 90. You can also set a maintenance window, so you can say you only want your devices to update after business hours. And then that will apply to any sort of firmware updates. And then from application update controls, you have a policy which allows you to control the Play Store auto update feature. So if you have a look on your Play Store, you'll see you can set your, as you probably know, you can set it to never do updates, or you can set it to Wi-Fi, or you can set it to any. That can also be controlled from your EMM console. So you could think about perhaps having it set to off and then selecting a range of devices and moving them into an update group so they can get updated and then taking them out again if you want to have that level of control.
Cool. Thank you, Jared. Next question we've got here. How easy is it to set up Android Enterprise? Who sets this up? Any cost, time taken to set up? Liz, I think that sounds like you. There's the boots on the street.
Yeah, Jared has answered as well. There's no cost from Android Enterprise for Android Enterprise from VMware. It's included in the cost of the console license and the maintenance. And from Google, it's their platform going forward for managing and securing enterprise devices. So it all comes baked into the device OS. There is a project required to set up Android Enterprise in your console. It's quite well documented. Obviously, my team's been doing a lot of that recently for customers, so we'd be really happy to talk to you afterwards and give you some indication of what's required and any kind of cost. So we'll get one of our business development managers to reach out and have that conversation.
Fantastic, thank you, Liz. Here's an interesting one. Richard writes in, are Android patches released by manufacturers then at the telco's discretion on whether they want to package, in inverted commas, and release it to the devices? Jared or James?
Yep. I'll jump into that one. So, just obviously, we're a lot different to our other competitor in this space. We don't own the devices end to end, except for the Pixel. So, of course, we release Android open source code. So it is open source. It goes to all manufacturers. They have their own choice of which chipset they're using, which drivers they need, which camera they're using, etc. So all those things mean that the manufacturer must control their updates. If they're on Android One, as we are with Nokia, obviously there's less customizations they're doing to their device, so it means it's easier for Nokia to release this, which is why you're seeing such great support for updates. But we do rely on the manufacturer to release those. Obviously, with AER, we're saying they must do their updates within 90 days. And with Android One, which is what Nokia are part of, it's within 30 days. So between a Pixel and a Nokia device, you're getting pretty much the same update frequency. So that explains how we release patches and the timings.
Okay, so but from the carrier's perspective, I guess just focusing on that one, is the carrier still involved in some kind
Yes. Yeah. So you tend to have, and like I worked at Samsung as well. There's obviously different versions of firmware based on if they choose to customize that firmware and do a Telstra build, for example, or a Vodafone build, versus what they call the open channel build, which you'll find in like a retail store like Harvey Norman. So if there is a customized version and if it's been purchased from that carrier and it's
okay, so there's a good way of putting it. Yep. If it came from a carrier, it may be throttled by the carrier, but I guess, James, from your point of view, then your Nokia devices, if they don't come from the carrier, they're not throttled by the carrier. Is that a fair statement?
Well, yeah, I guess there are two elements to that. With Android One, we're doing no carrier specific builds. So yes, there is a customization that we do, but that doesn't interfere with our ability to deliver the update. So what we do in the open market is we can deliver those straight away, as Gerard was saying. We do turn them around within 30 days of security updates and the operating system updates, obviously, as we can adapt them to the device. With the carrier, it is slightly different because they do their own internal testing and compliance to make sure that everything meets their standards. So we do often see, when it comes to maintenance releases or operating system updates, that there may be a delay to the open market of 1 to 2 weeks. Typically, they're pretty good these days with delivering that. With the security updates, they're all in a great rhythm now where they understand what the security update is, and we don't typically see too many delays in them being delivered to the market. But with maintenance release operating systems, you will see from time to time that there is a slight delay.
Awesome. Thank you for that, guys. Mike writes in and says, I have a Nokia 6.1 Android One and love the no bloatware and long battery life. Well, thanks, Mike. There's a good statement. Ryan's written here, Android Enterprise is currently costing US $7.99 per user per month USD. I don't think Jared, can you give some clarity on that? I don't think there was any costing for Android Enterprise licensing.
Certainly not from us. That's probably the license for Workspace One as opposed to anything. It's nothing specific to us for sure.
Perfect. Right, thank you. We've got AER versus Samsung as a user choice. Start delay. Go to here. Does VMware, here's one for you, Daryl, have any backup solution apart from Google Cloud or Samsung Cloud?
Yeah, no, I guess we're configuring the device over the air, not to back up the device. I mean, we essentially, obviously, for corporate data, our viewers obviously to have that synchronized to some sort of cloud service in that case, or using our content app to distribute information to the device. Yeah, in that case, so we're not providing a backup device service at this stage.
Excellent. Well, hey guys, look at the clock. It is 10:02 on my clock, and we started at 9:02, so I don't think we could hit it any more accurately than that. I said I'd get you gone in less than an hour. Sorry, we've gone into an hour just. I hope that was beneficial to anybody and everybody that was on the call. This will be recorded, and if you need to distribute it and send it to your extended teams, please reach out and we'll do that for you. Thank you to all of the presenters. Thank you to all the attendees. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Enjoy.
Thanks, Randall. Thank you, everyone.